What's up, guys? Excited to have you back tonight. I'm with Omar Morales. He's the writer of the Lunar Ladies from Scout that'll be out here soon. And I got the opportunity to sit down and talk to him. So I'm going to let him introduce himself because I think he knows himself a little better than I do. But this is Omar Morales.
Hey everybody, thanks for having me, Ryan. Yes, you hit the nail on the head. I have a release coming out called The Lunar Ladies from Scout Comics. It drops in comic shops in July, issue number 1, and then 2 months later, issue 2, and then 2 months after that, issue 3. So I think all 3 of them will hit before the end of the year in shops. So if it sounds interesting to you, it's an old-fashioned retro sci-fi type of comic, very kind of in the vein of like Buck Rogers, that style of comic book. I like the theory of found footage. You know, sometimes there's movies with found footage where it looks like someone's VHS camera or whatever. I had this idea for like a found comic. Like, what if there was a comic that looked like it felt like it was 100 years old, but yet, you know, it was a modern release, right? Like something you would find in the back of some dusty bin in some used bookstore or some old comic shop that carried, you know, golden age books from the 1940s or maybe even like up in your grandma's attic or something, right? So it's, you know, a lot of laser guns and, you know, ray guns and laser shots and pew pew and that kind of thing. So if that sounds interesting to you, you check it out, man. Lunar Ladies. It's a lot of fun. It's very light, right? It's not super heavy, you know, R-rated stuff. It's you know, PG, you know, for ages 10 and up. And it reads quick, and you know, it's light and fun, right? Like a perfect summertime read with, you know, for a family, you know, with a couple of kids that are 10 or older. And that's kind of how I intended to make it, right? Something that my own kids could read, because the first book I ever did, called Crusader, was very rated R, very adult, and they're still not old enough to read it. So I wanted to do something a little bit lighter and more accessible. And it's pretty different than anything else that's out in the market today, I think, because the colorist, Paula Goulart, she hand stained every page to make it look yellowed and faded, like if it was from the Golden Age, you know, like from 100 years ago. And she did a fantastic job coloring the book. It instantly gives you this feel of like nostalgia and like super old comics.
Did she work on the cover that I saw for number 1?
No.
No.
The cover for number 1 was drawn by Renee DeLiz. She's an artist from Legend of Wonder Woman, and then her husband Ray Dillon colored it. So, so the cover definitely has a different feel from the inside artwork. Let me see. Cover number 2 is also a different artist, and then cover number 3 is a different artist. So I use different artists for all 4 of the covers. The trade paperback is going to be done by the interior artist. His name is Joel Kotahar, and he did a fantastic job too, translating this kind of retro futuristic look. I gave him a lot of art references from like the 50s and 60s of like painted art that was supposed to depict what the future would look like, right? So this was like a 1960s version of what the future would look like. Yeah, and
the world of tomorrow.
Yes, exactly. The world of tomorrow, Tomorrowland, Disneyland from back in the day.
All that kind of stuff,
Yeah, the Jetsons kind of feel, right? So I gave him a bunch of that type of artwork, and he did a beautiful job translating the look and feel into the Lunar Ladies. And then James Reed, the letterer, did a great job using old-fashioned like thought bubbles, right? Like they used back in the old days of comics.
Yeah.
And using a lot of literal pew-pew and kind of thing for the ray guns and laser rays.
Sounds like very like pulp sci-fi, like Flash Gordon or something.
Yes, positively pulp sci-fi or ray punk, they call it, right? It's like it's like a thing, right? Ray punk,
like steampunk,
exactly. Ray punk is like this Flash Gordon pulpy
like
sci-fi
subgenre
type
kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what it's all about, man. So get into your local comic shop and ask them to order it up for you. Issue 1 drops in July, and then like I said, issue 2 I think in September, and then issue 3 in like either November or December, something like that. Scout likes to space out a couple months in between issues to give shops a good feel for if there's demand for it. so they know how much to order. So
Yeah.
so go in there and ask for it.
Yeah. That's the best way to get it, and get it on time, and make sure that you get a copy, and make sure that shops in the industry know what the demand is like, because that's the worst thing whenever a book really takes off and you don't have a copy because you were hoping to grab it on a shelf somewhere, So
Yeah, and pre-orders can really make a book go or kill it, right?
Out the gates.
Pre-orders, really, it's just like Kickstarter day one, right? If you get a lot of pledges on day one, you're off and running, and the algorithm is going to help you and push your campaign, because it's thinking, okay, a lot of interest on day one, therefore we need to push this. But if you got a couple pledges on day one, that could kill you right off the bat. So same kind of thing with pre-orders in shops, right? You get a lot of pre-orders, it's off and running. You don't, and good luck. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting how you were talking about the story, though, because it sounds like you know what your influences are, and it sounds like the inception of your idea was kind of like this found footage sort of thing. So are you telling kind of like twin storylines here, where the found footage is kind of putting together a story, and then your characters are also going through a story, or?
No, it's a singular story. It's a normal narrative. I was just trying to copy the found footage concept from movies and apply it to comics. Like what would found footage be like in the world of comics? Well, that'd be like finding this old treasure chest of super old comics somewhere, like I said, in your grandma's attic or something. And so that's kind of like the feel that I wanted for this book. It's modern, right? It's releasing right now in 2021, but as soon as you open it and start reading it, it's like, this could have been from the 1940s, could have been from the golden age. But yeah, it's a single narrative. That there's nothing too complicated about it. It's very easily accessible. I like to write my stories in such a way that even if you couldn't read the balloons, or let's say you're a kid that hasn't quite learned how to read yet, you could still flip through it and kind of understand the story basically just by looking at the expressions of the characters or the action that's happening, and still kind of figure it out. So I like to make my stories very digestible and easy to understand. To me, there's nothing worse than opening up a comic and getting like several pages into it and feeling like, I don't know what's going on here. All these characters blend together. Like I can't tell them apart. Like, who's this? What's their name? Why do I care? Like it's, there's too much dissonance between the storytelling and the art. Like it's not in harmony, and you end up confused, and then you end up just kind of slogging through it, just trying to finish it, but you're not really enjoying it because you're not really invested in what's happening, the characters, the storyline. So I like to make my stuff as accessible as possible. So yeah, that's my gig, man. I'm a comic book writer. I don't have any aspirations for Hollywood, right? I'm not trying to be an actor or a director or a screenwriter, or much less like a pro wrestler or a like a comedian. Like I don't have a blog. I don't have a podcast. All I love to do is write comics, and I've been doing it for about 10 years now. Been doing my own graphic novels as well as contributing to anthologies, and my home base is sci-fi. That's really what I enjoy. I truly love the genre and different ways of expressing the genre, right? There's like we were talking about earlier, Ray Punk, which is this like retro futuristic type of style. There's more modern sci-fi. There's dystopian sci-fi. Like I love it all, and I want to kind of dabble in all the different subgenres of sci-fi that I can.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's what I love to hear, man. Sci-fi is something I love a lot too. So I thought this was a book, like, because I connected with you through Anthony of Soda and Telepaths.
Yep.
Yeah, and like whenever he hit me up, I mean, this was probably like 2 or 3 days after I had just been looking at like FOCs and stuff, and I had seen Lunar Ladies, and I remember like the cover. I want to say it had like a lot of purple because it was real vibrant, and it just like stood out amongst like all those little boxes of cover art. There's all these like little thumbnails, and there was just like this one purple one that was just like really calling out to me, and so I remember like clicking on that. And I was like, this sounds interesting. And I put it on my list. And then like 2 or 3 days later, Anthony hit me up and he was asking me if I had any spots. And I'm like, yeah. And then he put your name out there. And I was like, I just saw that name somewhere. And he was like, well, he has a book coming out called The Lunar Ladies. I was like, that's what it was. I remember seeing your name whenever I clicked on that. So I think there's already something about this book that attracted me, and that's why I was excited to talk to you, because it sounds like a really cool concept based on the cover art and the little blurb I read. And now talking to you, like, it's really expanded my knowledge of it, and it just sounds really awesome. So I'm glad to be able to talk to you. I guess what I'd really like to ask, though, is how did you get connected with Scout? How did that deal come about?
Wow, this is a kind of a long story that takes several twists and turns. I'll start at the beginning, right? A couple friends of mine, Matt and Einar, started this anthology project called Not Forgotten. And the conceit of Not Forgotten was, what if we take a bunch of public domain heroes, right, from back in the 40s in the Golden Age, that have been forgotten about and lost to time, and let's dust them off, let's give them a fresh coat of paint, and let's create an anthology full of stories of these old heroes that have been forgotten and that nobody, cares about anymore, and that, there's not really an audience for them anymore, and let's bring them back to life, so to speak. So I did some research on several characters, and I landed on this character called Moon Girl, who was this kind of a poor woman's Wonder Woman, right? She was like super powerful Amazonian lady from the moon who has this like necklace that makes her powerful and makes her undefeated in battles, like magical moonstone necklace. And I kind of read through her history, and there was not much to her outside of her being really strong and being able to jump really high, and she would punch out bad guys in the back alley, bank robbers and goons and thugs and stuff like that. Pretty two-dimensional knockoff character, from the Golden Age. So I pitched for this anthology, and I said, I want to do a whole new story about Moon Girl where we see her as a little girl, where she's like, maybe 6 years old or 5 years old, kindergarten, first grade age, and see how she becomes Moon Girl and how she inherits the moonstone necklace from her mom, who's the queen of the moon, and she's the princess, the young, princess. And really tell the story of how she came to be and how she came to get her powers. And so I did like a 10 or a 12-page story, and it was well received. It was one of the lead stories in the very front of the book of Not Forgotten, which was a thick book, man. It had like over 20 stories from all kinds of great creators who did all these retro, stories about these old heroes. And really well done. Matt and Einar did a great job producing and kind of show running that anthology, and kickstarted it, and it did great. So then I took the concept, that short story, and I said, well, this was very well received. I've gotten a lot of great feedback because it is different, right? It's kind of zigging while the rest of the market is zagging, and kind of doing other types of stories, more adult, more kind of rated R material, which is nothing wrong with that. It's great. Like I love rated R sci-fi just as much as G-rated sci-fi. So I thought, okay, I have something here. It's a good concept. I'm going to expand this into like a full graphic novel, right? Like 80 pages, like a 3-act story, act 1, act 2, act 3. And I did that as my own Kickstarter, right? I published it myself under the title Moon Girl, which is a public domain character, and it's, I can use the name legally as long as my story is different from all the other versions of Moon Girl that are out there. So there's the original version from EC Comics. I think in the late 90s or early 2000, Red 5 Comics did a version of Moon Girl where she's kind of like this super spy James Bond type of character in like the 1950s, I think is when the setting is. I think. And then Marvel more recently did a Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, where the main character, Moon Girl, is like a young African-American girl with glasses, and she's super smart. And that's about all I know. I really haven't read the other ones because, just like you, I didn't want to be influenced by looking at other material and writing my own version of the story. So I kickstarted it like a few years ago, did well, raised like almost $12,000 and had like over 360 backers. So I shipped copies of it all over the world. It was a lot of fun, right? And so I knew that there was publishers out there.
This was a graphic novel?
Yeah, it was.
How many pages?
It was 88 pages, so it was an 80-page main story.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah.
And then an 8-page like bonus story that was like a prequel telling the backstory of one of the main characters and how she came to be. So yeah, that's kind of how it started evolving, right? It was a short story and an anthology. Then I made it into a 88-page graphic novel that I published under the title Moon Girl. And then I knew there was publishers out there that are friendly and amenable to something that had already been on Kickstarter, but they're willing to republish it to help you get a broader audience. Mm-hmm. So at the time that I was kickstarting Moon Girl, there was a guy, Charlie Stickney, who was kickstarting his own book called White Ash, which is a fantastic book. Mm-hmm. And he reached out to me and he said, hey, we're both running campaigns. Why don't we cross promote each other? I like your book. And I said, yeah, I like yours too. I think your artwork looks great. Let's cross promote. So we cross promoted. Fast forward to like a year or two later, and he becomes the publisher of Scout Comics, or one of the co-publishers, I should say. I think there's like 2 or 3 main guys over at Scout. And at that time, I had been negotiating with a different publisher, who shall remain nameless, but I didn't really get along with that guy. He did some weird stuff that I didn't really like. And before we got too deep into the process, I just said, hey, man, I think I'm going to go in another direction. I think you should too. Let's just shake hands and walk away. And so that's what I did. I pretty much got out of that deal. And I still had the property available. So I approached Charlie, as well as, there was another publisher involved too. I can't remember their name at the moment. But anyway, so I reached out, right, and sent in the pitch. And so this other publisher came and said, oh yeah, we're really interested. And I said, oh, wow, okay. And then the next day, Scout said, oh, we're also interested. So then I had like a choice between these two different publishers. And because I kind of knew Charlie and knew he was a really good guy and I trusted him, and he answered all my questions very forthrightly, very honestly, very directly. And I liked what he had to say. He said, at Scout, our philosophy is we want the creators to create. So, and we'll handle all the business stuff. We'll handle the printing. We'll handle some of the marketing. Like, we'll put a structure around you where you feel supported and you can just focus on putting out great content. And I really like the sound of that, because when you're doing your own Kickstarter, you're doing everything. You're the business person, the PR person, the marketing person, the advertising person. You're the person going to conventions, and booking your table and, dragging all your stuff and standing up for 8 hours and selling your thing. And you do contract negotiations, you hire artists, you fire artists. I mean, you do everything, right? You're this full package solution. Yeah. And with Scout, it was like, hey, man, we can handle a lot of this for you, right? Like, we'll deal with Diamond. We'll deal with other distribution channels and networks and get your book out into lots of spaces, digital spaces, physical spaces. So I really liked that philosophy and the fact that they were open to books that had already been kickstarted. And so I was like, all right, I'll sign with Scout. So I signed with them late in the year. Like, I think it was Halloween. It was the day that I actually signed my contract with them, and they countersigned it, and it was all ready to go. So I started the process of talking to them and working with them about getting them the pages, and then making some tweaks because they have a very specific lettering style, a style guide that they use. So I had to have my letterer, James, kind of go back and make some tweaks to match their style guide. And then came the business of like, oh, we like doing multiple covers, right? We like to have an A, a B, and sometimes even a C cover. So I had to get busy commissioning another cover from my friend of mine, Matt, who was the original publisher of that Not Forgotten anthology. And I said, hey, Matt, would you like to do a cover for Lunar Ladies with Scout? And he was like, yeah, awesome. So he banged out an awesome cover that features the villain, who's like looking at a tank that has like a clone inside of it, because that's like one of the big kind of topics in my story is cloning. And he did a fantastic job with it. So that is like the B cover to this issue #1 that's coming out in July. And then there's like a C cover, which is like a black and white version of the B cover. So a lot of the covers that are going to be coming, issues 2, issues 3, the alternate or the B is like a black and white, inks only, or a gray, because Scout loves having their variations. So that kept me pretty busy in the beginning of the year, was, you know, coming up with all these alternate covers, and then also preparing a cover for the trade paperback, which is eventually gonna, you know, come out from Scout as well. So that's really how I got engaged with them, and you know, I really enjoy their philosophy, and it's fun getting putting like a second life on a book that I've already done.
Yeah. I was a big fan of Frankie at Home on the Farm, and that was Jordan Thomas and Clark Bent, and that was a Kickstarter book. I really liked it there, and then they were able to come over to Scout with it, and I talked to Jordan, and he kind of described it the same as you. Like, it's just real creator friendly. They understand that there's two separate markets there, and that just because it's already sold on Kickstarter, that doesn't mean anything in the direct market, because there's a large majority of comic readers that don't cross over into Kickstarter, and Kickstarter readers don't really cross over into regular comics as much as you would think. So that's something Scout's been smart about from day one, is understanding those two separate markets.
Yes, you hit it on the head. You know, Kickstarter is a lot of people like me supporting each other, right? I think I've supported like almost 200 Kickstarters in the last, I don't know, 5 years or whatever. Like, it's like at least a couple a month that I'm supporting. And you're right, that's a different person than your hardcore comic shop reader that's in the shop every Wednesday and buying physical books and reading them. You know, I think a lot of creators like me, we buy PDFs from each other on Kickstarter, but sometimes we don't always get around to reading them, you know. And so you're right, there's like the reader market, and then there's the Kickstarter market for people that they just want to help. Sometimes they don't even really care about the reward. Like, for example, with the Moon Girl campaign, I was still getting emails like a year and a half later, like, hey man, I loved your campaign, I backed it, but I don't know if I ever got the reward. And I'm like, are you sure? Because I mailed them all out, right? And like, I didn't really challenge anybody. If someone said they didn't get it, then I said, okay, I'll mail you another one, you know, or I'll email you the PDF if that's what you ordered. But there was one guy in like Poland, I think. He was like, hey man, I never got it. I said, are you sure, dude? Because the shipping to Poland's pretty expensive. I just want to make sure that you really didn't get it. And he's like, no man, I swear. I said, okay. So I dragged my butt into the post office and spent another $25-$30 to mail it to Poland. But you know, I'm a very customer service friendly type of creator, right? Like there was one lady who said, hey, I love this, I got the package, but like a couple of the postcards were bent, you know, in the mail, so I sent her out a fresh set of postcards, you know, no questions asked. I'm happy to do it, you know, because then those people become loyal to you, right? And then by the next time I do another Kickstarter, you know, in a year or two, those people will remember that I treated them right, more so than the story or what Moon Girl was about. They're going to remember that I treated them right, and hopefully they'll come back and shop with me again. So, but yeah, you're right. Scout's very smart about how they do things. They realize that, you know, there might be a little bit of overlap in the two circles, but for the most part, they are kind of separate circles in the old Venn diagram. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and I think they've done really good at that. The other thing I wanted to ask you, you kind of described your book as, you know, like younger reader friendly and pretty, like, I don't want to say simple, but, you know, like a easy to follow narrative, I guess. What about their imprint, SKOOT? Because I've got daughters, and so we've been picking up some of those books lately. And in fact, there's one coming out this week I'm interested in picking up to read with them. So I don't know if you had talked about that or what the deal is there. I don't know how many books they even put out on that imprint.
I think SKOOT is more all ages, meaning like, you know, 5 and up probably. And I think my book's a little bit out of reach for that audience. Part of the conceit of Lunar Ladies is it's this utopian society of women that live under the surface of the moon like 1 million years ago. And it's just like this super high-tech advanced society of women. And it's because there's no men, any romance that happens on the moon is between two women. And so Moon Girl, the main character, she has two mommies. And I don't know if SKOOT would be friendly to that or not. I'm not sure. Maybe they are. Maybe they're, totally okay with concepts that might be harder to grasp for a young reader. But put it this way, the conversation never went there because I think the story is balanced enough where an adult reader can get something out of it just as much as a 10-year-old reader can. In fact, they probably read it differently because I did put some subtle kind of social commentary into the book that maybe a younger reader may not pick up on, but an adult reader for sure will pick up on, right? So like the villain, her whole thing is she wants men introduced into the moon society that's like this perfect utopia of nothing but women. So she creates a Y chromosome and starts this army of male clones. And so that's what brings her into conflict with the queen. The queen's like, no, man, you broke the rules. You can't be creating men here. Like, we've got a good thing going here. It's all women. We're all happy, living here under the surface of the moon. Everything's good. And now you're going to bring in men and you're going to screw this all up. So they have, they have a conflict. And that's like, what's kind of starts the story off right away on like page 4. I think the queen and this mad scientist like start going at it with laser guns because of this controversy over introducing men. So, I think a younger reader, they're not going to necessarily pick up on the political and social commentary there. They're going to pick up more up on the laser guns and all these clones look cool. They look kind of creepy. And so I designed the clone boys to look like the mascot from this California hamburger restaurant called Bob's Big Boy, who was like this like cherubic looking, happy like boy who has this like big swoopy hair. He kind of looks like Astro Boy kind of. And so I actually named the clones the Big Boys after this Bob's Big Boy hamburger restaurant who had this mascot that looks like like all the clones, who have this like frozen smile, and they're very creepy because even though they're doing like violent stuff like an army and a soldier, they've got this like plastic smile that makes them look super,
at you.
Super creepy, right? And so I've kind of peppered the story with some social commentary. So I think it'll be satisfying even for your 30-year-old hardcore comic book every Wednesday buyer. And
I guess, can you tell us who the Lunar Ladies are? I mean,
sure,
my initial impression was that they were kind of like a super team or something like that. So what are the Lunar Ladies? What are they doing?
Okay, all right. So like I said, the conceit is it's 1 million years ago in outer space. You've got this utopian society of women that lives under the surface of the moon, super high tech, flying cars and high speed trains, and it's like perfect utopia, sci-fi utopia. And so the main characters are like the queen, right? Queen Valoria, her daughter, who is Moon Girl. Her real name is Claire, but they call her Moon Girl as like a nickname. And then she has her second mommy, a lady named Star, who's like the queen's like lover and second mom to Claire. So those are like the three main characters, right? And then you have the villain, Venus. She's the mad scientist who creates men and then clones them. And so what happens is they have this conflict, and then so the queen decides to keep the moonstone necklace safe and my daughter safe. I'm going to stash her on planet Earth, which is prehistoric at the time. So they fly to Earth, and she stashes her daughter and her lover, Star, who's like the second mommy to Moon Girl, and the moonstone necklace, and she gives her the necklace, right? That's how we have the exchange of power. So she gives up the magical necklace to her daughter, her 6-year-old daughter, and stashes them on Earth. And then she goes back to the moon to have this conflict with the mad scientist. And the mad scientist defeats her, puts her into this like jail. And then she goes after the necklace and the daughter on Earth, prehistoric Earth, with her army of clones. And so it's not really a super team as much as it is a political conflict between two differing ideologies. One led by a mad scientist, another led by a queen, who has this incredible power because of this talisman that she wears around her neck, and she's now given it up to her daughter. So the queen becomes vulnerable, and that's why she loses when she goes back to the moon. So anyway, she escapes out of the jail with her head of security, her like right-hand person, her main soldier, and then they go to Earth, knowing that this mad scientist is chasing after the daughter. And so that kind of sets up the whole story, right? We have like prehistoric Earth with like mastodons and saber-toothed tigers and cave people running around Earth. And then here's this like super futuristic group of ladies flying in with spaceships, and like it's a big contrast, right? Like prehistoric Earth and then like these ancient, super sophisticated women. And they have this big fat battle on Earth where the lunar ladies actually have to enlist cave people to help them fight against this army of clones. So that's kind of really what the story's about. It's a kind of a political and ideological conflict, and it taps into this notion of ancient astronaut theory. So I'm a big fan of History Channel, and they have the show called Ancient Aliens, right? And the whole conceit of that show is aliens or sophisticated life forms have been visiting the Earth for millions of years. And so this kind of goes along with that theory, right? The society of women existed back 1 million years ago when we were still cave people living among, mastodons and saber-toothed tigers and whatever else was giant sloths and, all the other things that were on Earth back in those prehistoric days. And so that's kind of one nerdy thing that I did with this book is I peppered it with Easter eggs from ancient alien theory. Right, there's several artifacts that show highlights as like proof that these things existed and that we were visited by ancient astronauts from other civilizations for millions of years. So I had a lot of fun placing select Easter eggs from that theory into the book. So that's probably something unexpected. If an Ancient Aliens fan happens to buy this book and pick it up, they'll flip through and be like, oh, look at that, So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, man. So that's really it. It's a lot of fun, old-fashioned style storytelling, and I think it's light enough for a young reader, but yet there's enough meat on the bones for an older reader as well. So it's a kind of a fine line to walk, but I had a lot of fun walking that fine line.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And you said this is told across 3 issues or 4 issues?
Yep, 3 issues. It's a classic miniseries, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. It's a fully self-contained story. So by the time you get to the end, it is the end. Certainly there could be more stories. I just don't know that I'll have time to do them because I'm busy kind of doing other stuff and other stories that I want to do that'll keep me busy for the next 3 years. But we'll see, man. If there's like great reception to it and a lot of demand, who knows? I might have to throw myself back into that universe and do another story, but we'll see.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. I'm excited to read through it. And I guess, what other books have you done? Because you said you've been writing for like 10 years. So what books should we look for from your backlog?
So I guess the main one that you could look for is called Crusader, which is also like my handle for Instagram and Twitter and various other forms of social media. It's Crusader with a Z, and that one is about a secret hitman for the Pope. So imagine if the Pope had this like monk that wears like a brown cloak that looks like a Jedi, who's secret that nobody knows about, who does all the wet work and all the secret missions and like assassinations really on behalf of the church and the Pope that no one can know about, right? Because the Pope's not supposed to be taking people out, right? Yeah. So, and that
how many Hail Marys is that?
Yeah, right. Could you imagine confession for this guy? In fact, that's kind of a theme throughout the book is he does go into the confessional a couple times, and you do see what's weighing down on him, and what part of what weighs down that character, the Crusader character, is he doesn't want the job. He doesn't want to be doing this. He was a priest and was happy living that life when he gets recruited to do this job, and he didn't really have a choice. He was kind of forced into it because he finds out it's part of his family lineage, and that only men in this lineage can hold the mantle and do the job of Crusader. And so he kind of very reluctantly does the job, and he doesn't want to do it, but he does it anyway out of a sense of obligation to the church and to the Pope. So it's very rated R. It has some very adult themes in it. It's got a lot of sci-fi. It's got an alien angle. It's got a supernatural angle too, because there's demonic possessions, and he has to go and exorcise demons. Yeah, so I threw a little bit of everything into that book because it was the first thing I ever did, and I didn't know if I would ever do it anything else ever again. So I was like, all right, I'm going to cram this sucker with a lot of the
I got to get
themes.
everything in.
Yeah, a lot of the themes and ideas that are important to me. And I think I wrote that it was like 10 years ago, and then I kickstarted it. I think it was in 2013, 2014, maybe somewhere in there. And yeah, I think what happened is I kickstarted at the end of 2013. I started shipping copies in 2014, and then in 2015 I got it into Diamond. I just, as an independent publisher, just pitched it to them, and they accepted it, and I got it into Diamond. I got it into Comixology, and this was all like my first thing that I ever did. So it was very exciting to be in these distribution channels, alongside Marvel and DC, which are owned by Warner Brothers and Disney, these mega companies. So you can look for that. I have it on my website, theforcemedia.com. It's available through Amazon, like on Comixology, which is part of Amazon. It's also available through Kindle, right? You can do a digital copy, and it's on Unlimited. So if you subscribe to Comixology Unlimited, you can read it for free. It's part of the subscription. Moon Girl is still up there under the original title Moon Girl as a Comixology Unlimited, where you can read it for free, Kindle or Comixology, your choice. I also sell hard copies of the graphic novel hardcover of Moon Girl, the 88-pager, direct from my website. But I'm thinking here pretty soon, probably July 1, I might start offering it, just because I don't want it to compete with the Scout version, the Lunar Ladies.
Yeah.
And the reason they wanted me to change the title was so that there wouldn't be any confusion with Marvel's current Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. So I agreed to that. I thought it was reasonable. So that's kind of like the two main ones that are in my back catalog from me. And then in terms of anthologies, I've got a lot of stuff out there. There's Not Forgotten anthology. There's another anthology called Mañana, which is made up entirely of Latinx creators, Latinx writers, artists, colorists, letters, and we combined to do this story. It's another real thick volume. It's like well over 25 stories, well over 200 pages. And that one is about the year 2492. So what happens to Latinos on Earth 1,000 years after Columbus first came and conquered America, so to speak? What does life look like for Latinx people 1,000 years after this historic event of Christopher Columbus? Yeah. I'm also part of the Menagerie anthology, which is really exciting. That's a hardcore sci-fi book by my friend Ramon Govea. He's a great creator, writer, publisher, producer. He's like a full-service creator, and he has this franchise called Menagerie, which is like an outer space adventure about these like space commandos and like a society of humans that is very religious, but they don't have a home, so they're trying to find a home. Anyway, long story short, he invited me to be a part of this anthology, and he said, hey man, would you like to do a short story about one of the characters? And I immediately jumped on it, because one of the characters is this like badass like assassin woman who has like 2 katana swords that are like laser activated. They have like this like electric crackling, laser sword kind of thing. Yeah. So I pitched him a story about her, and he liked it, and he said, all right, let's do this. And so he organized a bunch of big names. Brian Edward Hill, who's done work for DC and Marvel and Image through Top Cow. And then he's also now doing Hollywood stuff. He's like a well-known Hollywood screenwriter, does TV shows and movies. And then Brandon Easton and Robert Jeffrey and like some others too. Brian Hawkins, who's from Mad Cave, he got him involved. And like, some really great names in there. So I think that one's like
Yeah.
9 or 10 stories, and it's coming out through Second Sight Publishing. So it was kickstarted, and then Second Sight Publishing is going to republish it, and it'll be available. I think Menagerie, just the standalone series, is already available through Diamond. But then this anthology that I'm in it's called Menagerie Declassified Anthology. If you're interested, you can order it up through Diamond. I think at some point this summer.
Yeah, that's really cool. I've talked to a couple of people that have books coming out through Second Sight now, so they seem to be on the up and up.
Yeah, they're another one that's very smart about taking content that was previously kickstarted and then republishing it. So yeah, I think more of the small press are kind of doing it that way. I think I want to say that Source Point Press, I think, also does it that way.
Yeah, I think they've picked up a couple of Kickstarters as well. Yeah. Right.
And what was I going to say? Oh, a couple of my friends, they did this book called Metal Shark Bro. And they kickstarted it, and now it's on Scout, right? And so it's a really fun, kind of wild book about this like shark who plays heavy metal guitar, and he's like an action hero, you know. It's really over the top.
Bob and Kevin.
Yeah. I'm gonna be on their show, I think, like tomorrow.
Actually, you know what? I was listening to the episode they dropped today, and they mentioned that. They said we're gonna be talking to Omar right at the end.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, yeah, he's making all the rounds. That's awesome.
Yeah. Anthony's doing a great job, putting me through the circuit. But yeah, man, if anyone's interested in reading my stuff or buying my stuff, they can come to my website, theforcemedia.com. I sell direct from there. It's also got links out to Comixology and Amazon. And that's really, my back catalog. My own stuff, I probably do a book every 5 years, just because it takes longer for me because I have a full-time job, full-time family. And so I really kind of take my time marinating the story in my head, then writing it. And then I have to go out and hire the right people to bring it to life. And then that whole process takes a couple years. And then comes like the Kickstarter piece or the publisher piece, either way, it takes long, Because if you like with Scout, right? Like I signed it on Halloween last year, and issue 3, the final end of the story, is not going to be out till like November, I think, or maybe even December. So it's almost like a full year from the day I signed, even though the book was ready to go, just with some tweak. It takes time, right? So, and then I have a book that I'm working on now. It's my pride and joy. It's called Major Tomas. It's about a young Latino immigrant who dreams of becoming an astronaut. And then when he finally realizes his dream and he goes into outer space, he gets lost in space. And he has to try to find his way home under very dire circumstances, where he encounters AI robot life and alien life, and has this epic adventure in outer space.
Yeah, cosmic adventure.
Yeah.
Man, that sounds awesome. I'm excited about that now.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it, man. I just talked to the artist Serge Acuna today for a couple hours on the phone because he's starting to do layouts and rough kind of sketches of the first 20 pages or so. That one's going to be about a 104-page story. So we had a great dialogue today, understanding the themes and the characters and the motivations, and I'm super excited about it. The colorist is already lined up. His name is Raul Angulo. He does fantastic work. And then for letters, I know that name. Yeah, he's done stuff for Vault. He's done stuff for, I want to say, Dynamite, or maybe Boom, one of the two, or maybe both.
I bet he worked on Dynamite, or not Dynamite, Aftershock.
Quite possibly. Quite possibly.
I think he did Dead Day with Ryan Parrott.
I know he's done some Power Ranger stuff, some Buffy stuff, and then he did a book called Sarah.
Okay, yeah.
Angulo.
That was a TKO book, I think.
Or maybe Vault. Anyway, so he's lined up for colors, and then for letters, I'm gonna.
That's really cool.
And for letters, Taylor Esposito. So it's like a dream team of guys.
Oh, yeah.
And it's important to me that they're all Latinx guys because we're telling a story about Latinx protagonists. So we want to represent ourselves out in the marketplace, you know, telling a story from an authentic vantage point as we can. And the book's for everybody, right? It's not meant for just one type of audience. But I think you'll see that more and more where African American creators come together to tell African American stories in comics, which is awesome. And Asian, and, you know, anybody else who's out there who feels like they're in a minority group or like a group that's underrepresented, you know, could be lifestyle preference or even religious preference, whatever. I think it's awesome when people kind of band together and create their own stories, so then they feel like it's an authentic story that they're offering out into the marketplace. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm working on.
Like Pride anthologies that I've gotten off Kickstarter. There was one I picked up, I think last year, Black Noir, and it was a bunch of Black creators doing like noir style stories, like in an anthology, and it does, like, it just brings everything together in a different way when you have different groups of people that are really creating around their experiences. Yes,
exactly right. That's why it was so important for me to hire Serge and Raul and Taylor, and also like the covers, like Renee DeLiz, who did the cover of Lunar Ladies #1. She did the cover for Major Tomas as well. And then I have another cover coming out from a guy called Joe Romero, which is a fantastic cover. So all the way through the process, I'm trying to use as many Latinx creators, contributors as I can. So yeah, man, thank you for your interest in it. It's I'm going to be doing artwork probably for the rest of this year, colors probably in the beginning of next year, letters, hopefully the book will be kind of done like maybe around this time next year, roughly. And then I have the option of trying to, you know, get it published or going Kickstarter and then publishing anyway with like somebody like a Scout or a Second Sight or Source Point Press or whoever's out there that's friendly to republishing something that's already been on Kickstarter. So we'll see. That's a decision I'll have to make at some point in the future. But
I'm sure the market's going to be very different in a year. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it kind of already is, right? Because of COVID, people like me had to get very crafty about how do I reach an audience during a time when everything is shut down. And I found this really interesting group on Facebook called Plan C Distribution Group. It was started by this lady called Jen King, who's a retailer out of Texas. She's very innovative. Like, she has a lot of like live shows where she's selling books, and a lot of them are independently created and owned books that she's pushing out to this like audience that she has. And she started this Facebook group called Plan C, and it was for guys like me who have books available for sale to go out and say, hey, who would like, you know, copies of whatever, Crusader or Moon Girl, and I'll ship them direct to you, right? No diamond, no middleman. And that was really cool. That was interesting. I had a few shops hit me up and make orders, and I shipped out, you know, dozens of books, and that kind of replaced con season for me, right? Where I would be selling my books directly to people right from a table. So it was a time to get
a little
scrappy.
bit of a spoiler alert, but Bob and Kevin, they talked about that too, how they they wrote Metal Shark Bro and then they kickstarted it. But the Kickstarter money went to pay for the artist and the letter and the color and everything, and then to like print all the copies they need plus a small supply. And then they would go to cons, and that's how they were making their money off of their books, was they would go to cons and they would hand sell all the extra copies they printed, you know. And then if, you know, they would take a portion of that and invest it in printing more copies so they could keep hand selling, you know. And whenever everything shut down, like you were just talking about, you know, how do you sell those copies that the income was based on actually like hand selling them at cons or getting out into shops and talking to the owners and just putting one on the shelf for them, you know? So that's a great way to help try to like keep creators paid, because that's the hardest part, is the writer is like, you still have to make your money somehow else, you know?
Yes, absolutely right. And hand selling is the greatest way to, because you're getting the full margin, right? When you sell through Diamond, they request like a 60% discount off the cover price of the book, and by the time you include shipping, you're lucky if you're like breaking even at that point, right? But hand selling at a con, you know, if the book's $14, $20, you're getting that whole 14, $20, whatever it is that you're charging, which helps cover the cost of printing, helps cover the cost of marketing, helps cover the cost of buying a table at a convention, and then you still have a little bit of profit left over, right? When you're hand selling versus selling with Diamond, you know, it's almost like a wash, right?
Yeah.
But what Diamond gives you is a platform for wide distribution across various countries. So it's a bit of a give and take, right? So I think what you're saying is absolutely correct. The normal distribution route, there's not a lot of money in it, but hand selling, you know, or selling direct off a website like I do, as well as going to cons, that is where a creator really earns back some of this money that they've invested.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see because, you know, like not that your information is wrong, but you're speaking on Diamond at a point where they were the you know, the monopoly on distribution as far as putting it in front of that many eyeballs. I'm really interested to see what happens with individual creators and these smaller publishers now that LUNAR's actually got like a pretty strong presence, and there's going to be some competition in the distribution market now. I wonder how that's going to change for independent creators trying to get into shops.
I think it's only going to be better for us because now Diamond is just one of many options, right? Like I think Scout recently signed a distribution deal outside of Diamond. Marvel and DC have been very active in gaining distribution deals outside of Diamond through like Penguin or, you know, these other kind of well-known book distributors. For a hot minute there, before it went out of business, Toys R Us was playing around with bringing in comics, not through Diamond, but through other sources. Yeah, and then digital too is constantly evolving and changing. That marketplace is constantly morphing. Like my friend Matt, he worked with this company called Madefire, which was a digital app for comics, and their thing was like playing around with motion and sound to try to bring comics to life. And they recently just went out of business. So, but who knows? Maybe somebody else can pick up that concept and keep it going, right? Where comics have a little bit more motion.
Somebody recently sent me a comic that was like some kind of new motion comic platform kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, these things are popping up all the time, right? Before Comixology had Unlimited, there was like 5 different companies, digital companies out there with this subscription model, right? They wanted to be like the Netflix of comics. A couple of them are still hanging around out there, but I think Comixology Unlimited really kind of took the wind out of their sails. And you know, I'll admit I'm a subscriber of Comixology Unlimited. It's a great deal. For $5.99, you get this enormous catalog of things that you can read. And there's some really good stuff on there. So it satisfies my needs for sure as a reader who's not as reading as much as I would like to because I'm busy creating and marketing and selling. But if ever I want to pop in there and read like volumes 1 through 6 of Invincible, I can because they're available.
Yeah. My wife, she's a big fan of Amazon. You know, she orders everything off of Amazon. And it's just become a better deal to drop to like $110 a year. We get Prime, and that gives us access to the TV. And I signed into Comixology through my Amazon login, and apparently Unlimited is included in that too. So I've been putting it to use because I've been reading old Valiant issues like the Exo Manowar stuff. I've been following along with this like book club on YouTube. And so like all of the stuff from the Valiant universe that they want to read to kind of get up to speed on the universe and kind of follow it in this great order, like all of that stuff's on Unlimited. And it makes it really hard to say no to a great deal like that, you know?
Absolutely. And it's such a space saver, right? I've had to stop collecting physical books because I ran out of space here in my man cave. I have these like huge cabinets. There's like 6 of them, and they're all full. Right? I've got no more room. So Comixology Unlimited, or just Comixology in general, is great for me. But you know, physical books are still, you know, 80-90% of the market, right? It's not like it's transforming overnight. It's a slow transition, but there's no denying that digital has a place. There was a while there where people were like, nah, digital, and dismissive of it, right? There's that famous quote from Stan Lee, comics are like boobs. They look great on a digital screen, but I'd rather hold one in my hand, It's like, and I get that. Like, I love reading a physical book. It's just, I was just running out of space. So I have to be very selective nowadays with what physical books or even physical media in general, right? Like with video games, pretty much everything's download. With movies, I can't remember the last physical
streaming
streaming and renting via streaming.
Like digital lockers,
Exactly. But yeah, I love that there's so many options for the independent creator these days. Getting back to your original point, there's hand selling in person, there's your own website, there's all these various digital channels, and then now physical. It's great, I think, that Diamond's not the only game in town, and that there are different avenues you can explore now, especially through someone like a Scout or Second Sight or Source Point or whoever else is out there, small press, that are really getting aggressive and cutting deals to get different distribution channels up and running.
Yeah, because it was kind of a big deal that Diamond shut down when the pandemic happened and all that. But honestly, even if there had been 2 or 3 distributors at that time, I believe they still would have shut down the supply chain. Because even Marvel and DC were calling pencils down, and at that point there's really nothing to ship in the first place. So I didn't see it as like that crazy nearly as much as like just the idea that they had this monopoly, and so they were basically like beating down publishers' doors saying like what cut we're going to take, and they were the gatekeepers. They effectively could say like, I don't care if your book is good, if it's bad politics, I'm not going to sell it for you, or whatever else. So I think that's what's really interesting about the way that we've now got like this more diversified distribution, because it's going to affect the small guys. Like Marvel and DC books, we're going to get there no matter what. They ran the show. Image puts out enough content. Boom is putting out enough books now. Like these are people that they weren't going to say no to, but regular average Joes, even if you had the followers, like they could say no just because they didn't want to take that risk, and that's gatekeeping. That's locking people out of the business. So I think by diversifying our distribution options, it's really going to change who can say no to what and how all of that's going to play out as well.
Yeah. I'll tell you a quick story about Diamond. With my very first book, Crusader, right? They said, we want 60% off of the cover price, which is like their standard negotiating tactic, right? I'm sure Marvel and DC have a better deal, but for an independent guy like me who nobody knows, they were like 60% off cover price. That's the ante into the game, because we have to make a margin, and then the shop owners need to make a margin. Okay, fine. So then at the 11th hour, they go, hey, we have 2 different warehouses that you need to ship to. And I go, okay, but they look like they're in the same city. They're like on the same street. Like, I'm confused. They're like, yeah, one's across the street from the other one. I go, okay, so what does that mean for me? They're like, well, we need another 2% so that we can afford the overhead of splitting up and getting them into 2 different warehouses. I go, wait a minute. You're trying to gouge me for another 2% for the right to ship directly to this second warehouse, which is literally across the street from your other warehouse. Like, you're telling me there's no way to get books across the street to the other place? I got to pay you another 2% for that? They were like, yes, take it or leave it. Take it or leave it. So, of course, by that point, we're so far ahead in the negotiations, and I've done all this planning and integrating myself as a vendor to them that I'm like, okay, fine. Take your extra 2%, you giant 800-pound gorilla who's breathing down my neck. A single guy making comics out of his garage. Like, fine, take your extra 2% for your warehouse that's literally across the street that you can pallet jack, into the other location.
Holy cow, man. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it'll be nice to see them kind of leveled out with some competition. I wonder if they'll even be able to stay in business, because it sounds like they've been living so so high on the margins because of their monopoly. I don't know if they know how to run a business the right way, with some competition.
They were already struggling, I think, at least from the local shop owners that I would talk to. They would say, man, books come in damaged. They come in lost. The orders aren't full ever. You're constantly on the phone telling them, I only had a partial order. I'm missing X, Y, and Z. When's it going to come? I've got disappointed customers. So I think they were already kind of struggling to keep up. And we'll see, man, because whoever has the best customer service and all that, like supply chain and logistics really nailed down, they're going to be the winner.
Yeah. Yeah, because I remember whenever they shut everything down last year, in the rumor mill, it starts immediately, so who knows how much truth there is to stuff. But I remember at the time they had shut down, they weren't going to send any books out of the warehouse anymore, but they were still telling Marvel and DC they had to pay for the books that were there because they were taking the books and then they would ship them out and then they would get all the money back in, and Marvel would get their cut or whatever. So they're telling Marvel and DC, like, you have to pay for the books that are already here, even though they're not going out to the shop to be sold or anything, And so it very much came off as the situation where they're trying to recoup costs. Like, they were spending money they didn't have, and now that the chain got mixed up, now all of a sudden they're out money somewhere and they can't afford to ship any books until they get payment from somebody else to give them money to put in the shipping pockets, so
right.
Who knows, but it definitely fell apart pretty quick for them once everything kind of hit the fan.
Yes, and it was just a matter of time. You can't have everything concentrated into one player. My goodness.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the business is too big for that. But I don't want to hold you up anymore. I know we talked about Lunar Ladies, so I guess tell us where we can find you and what the street dates are for Lunar Ladies, so everybody knows when to look for it. And also, I guess, are FOCs already due for it?
Yeah, I think the FOC for issue number 1 closed like maybe a week ago. But my thinking is if you still go into your shop and ask for issue number 1, maybe they can like get it on a second order, So yeah, go. If you're interested, go into your shop, ask them for Lunar Ladies number 1. The order number was May 211676. It lands in July in shops. Hopefully there'll be a second order, and people can still get in on issue number 1 that way, and then issue 2 months after that in September, and then issue 3 I think November. So there's still plenty of time, in my opinion, to go in and ask your shop to, order up number 1, and then just keep your eyes open for number 2 and number 3, and hopefully you order all 3, get the full story, and really enjoy it. My website is theforestmedia.com. That has like little buttons that link out to all my social media. My main one's probably Twitter. That's @thecrusader, TheCruzader. Instagram's very similar. It's _Crusader. But like I said, my website has buttons to all of them, like YouTube, Tumblr, Pinterest, you name it, Facebook, even LinkedIn, for professional networking. I've got that button on my website as well. My books are available for sale there. You can read more about my projects, look at some artwork, look at some videos that I've done, like with Brian here. I'll post this one up eventually once it's ready. So yeah, man, that's really the best way to connect with me. It's one-stop shopping on my website, theforestmedia.com. Oh, and I also forgot to mention, this is a fun little project I did during the pandemic. I did a Mandalorian fan fiction. It's 12 pages, full color, full production. It's available for free on my website. It's even got like its own like navigation, it says Mandalorian PDF. You'll see it at the very top of the page. And if you click on that, you can either download the PDF or you can just read it inside of like a reader inside the page and just flip through the pages. And that was a ton of fun, man. I did a story called like The First Hunt or something like that. and it's basically Mando as a rookie, the first time he's a bounty hunter, going out on his first bounty, and it ends up being like a whale of a bounty that connects to all of the Star Wars universe. So that was a ton of fun to do. So if you're a Star Wars fan, encourage you to go out, read it. It's free. I can't charge for it because it's not my property, but I can certainly give it out for free, and you can download it PDF, share it with your friends, share the link with your friends. It's all there. So thanks for that reminder.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I'll make sure I'll have all the links in the bio, description, show notes, all of that information. So we'll make sure people find you. But it's been a blast talking with you. I'm excited to check out Lunar Ladies.